What is up, denizens of the interwebs? It's Chats here, coming at you with another video, and this time we're trying something new. Instead of doing my normal news videos, I'm going to be attempting to do a little bit of an op-ed, specifically explaining the reason why the extreme left can't seem to relate or understand the perspective of the people who are center or even a little bit right, and why the Overton window has moved so far that it completely eliminates the ability for them to rationalize with anyone who isn't with them. So I don't really have any visual aid, so let's just get right into this. So, for those of you who don't know me, and those who do will probably find it really annoying that I'm saying this again, I spent pretty much my entire life being pretty decently left. I've always been a bit of a moderate, and I've always been extremely anti-authoritarian. I am an extreme libertarian who opposes pretty much any form of power that I do not recognize. On top of that, I am not a heterosexual man, and that is actually going to be very key to what I'll be saying later on, so sorry for saying it again. And obviously, I'm still a college student, so that's playing a major part of this as well. So the reason I'm doing this is, yesterday, on Tuesday, I had a conversation with one of my professors. My professor teaches a class about film and studying that in the lens of multiculturalism, so of course you know he's an absolute communist. Even on the first day of class, he ended up saying that the only reason why MAGA says Make America Great Again in reference to the 1960s is because in the 1960s all of the immigrants were white. He legitimately said that, and he legitimately believes that, and I 100% believed him when he did. And when I pushed back, he did not appreciate it, at least I thought. Later in the class, he actually thanked me for speaking my mind and for being willing to do so, because so few students are actually willing to do it. And admittedly, I'm only willing to do it because I'm a senior, and it doesn't matter as much if I get kicked out. Also, given the fact that my college has a dedication to freedom of speech, I would probably be at least loosely protected if I were to try and speak out. But yeah, my professor is a major lefty, and he has a lot of issues comprehending a lot of what I have to say, because he is physically incapable of understanding my point of view, and that's exactly where I'm coming from. In my personal opinion, and that's why this is an op-ed, the reason why the left cannot engage in debate with the right or moderates or anyone who doesn't fit the far left Overton window. The Overton window is an idea that basically highlights what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in the current zeitgeist of politics. And this is something a lot of people talk about, but not very many people take the time to explain. As the Overton window moves, the people who are in the center either move with the Overton window or get left behind by it, because the center is the policy standard of the Overton window, with popular on either side, and then sensible, acceptable, radical, and unthinkable. And what's really happened over the last 4 years is the people who were in the center of the Overton window then are now in the unthinkable stage. But as the Overton windows moved, so has the fear of being in the consequences of not being inside of the window, meaning that people who aren't outside of it are feeling left alone, isolated, and silenced. And you can really see that with Zachary Levi, the actor who played Shazam, who recently came out to endorse Donald Trump. Where Levi had said, "My parents were Canadian Democrats that turned into Reagan Republicans when they taught me to have a healthy level of distrust of the government and a healthy level of distrust for industry that runs amok." And of course, that leads me to one of my favorite quotes of all time. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help," which was said by Ronald Reagan. Now, obviously, I don't have an opinion of Reagan. I don't have a clue what he did, because no one teaches history anymore. Are you crazy? But Levi continues, "I stand with Bobby, and I stand with Tulsi, and I stand with everyone else who's standing with the President Trump. Because I do believe of these two choices that we only have two. Donald Trump, President Trump is the man who can get us there. And he's going to get us there because he's going to have the backing and the support of the wisdom and the knowledge and the fight that exists in Robert Kennedy Jr. and the former Representative Tulsi Gabbard." And a lot of people are going to agree with this sentiment. I want to find a single person who has an actual issue with the content of this statement. Because nothing he says is really objectionable, because he justifies his support by mentioning Democrats who are supporting Trump. And Tulsi Gabbard is a huge reason why I was so quick to accept Trump as well. Now, of course, these comments were not popular whatsoever, not amongst Twitter. Said that he went full Nazi, with a lot of other actors who are far left fascists coming out into the woodworks to attack him and do everything we knew that they would, just like they did when Gina Carano made her statements. And the most prominent person to make a statement is Will Wheaton. Something I love about our nerd community is how welcoming and diverse we are. We are a safe place for everyone who has ever been othered. We are a safe place for vulnerable people to come together and safely fall in love with all the nerdy stuff we love. With that in mind, I think it's pretty important for anyone who supports Nerds HQ and who knows who and what they are supporting. What a disappointment, what a disgrace, how disgusting. Quick edit here, gently pointing out anyone who's not aware of it, the paradox of tolerance. A place is not safe if you can't keep out people who would make it unsafe. This includes non-physical safety, and fundamental human rights are not a matter of opinion. Feeling disgusted. Now, I'm going to crucify myself here. I haven't seen Star Trek, but I feel like this is probably a fitting picture here. Shut up, Wesley. And it is an absolutely ridiculous statement to make. Oh, well, it's all about acceptance, but if you have a single incorrect thought, get the hell out of here. The fact that you are welcomed until you aren't, and once you aren't welcomed, you're excommunicated for good. I am in a college that is a liberal college. I am surrounded by a lot of very liberal people and liberally minded people. Not always by choice, but you know what? I don't usually care what someone believes as long as they are a decent human being to me. And one of the things I do is I attend a board game club at my local college. And the problem is, I know for a fact that if I open my mouth to the wrong people, I get kicked out. It's really concerning and a really big issue for me, where I'm at the point where it's mostly sending, I hate to use their language, but dog whistles to a bunch of people to find anyone who's like-minded to me. Thankfully, I have found a bunch of them. One of my close friends is a New Jersey Jew who I like to make fun of constantly, but I have to be careful because if someone at that club hears me and doesn't like what I'm saying, next thing I know, I'll be thrown to the curb. But back to talking about my professor. Yesterday during class, we had a nice conversation about disability. We watched a movie called CODA, aka Children of Deaf Adults, which is a pretty good movie. It was about a girl who loved to sing, but her entire family was deaf, and of course they didn't support her, and she wanted to go to Berkeley. Lots of plot holes with the movie, small issues that were kind of takes me out of it, but as general, it's a pretty good movie, had a really good emotional beat. If you're a cry person, you're going to cry during it. I did not. And this led to a discussion about the disabled community because it is usually a community that's not discussed. And we talked about all of it: physical disabilities, elderly disabled people, children with disabilities, and of course, invisible disabilities. I personally despise the label of invisible disabilities because it is a completely and utterly disingenuous label. Because yes, while a lot of the things labeled there are technically disabilities, and they are not visible, what they consider invisible disabilities are things like dyslexia, ADHD, and stuff like that, which calling them disabilities almost elevates them to a status that they aren't before, giving them more power than they actually deserve. But I digress. We got to a point where we were starting to talk about language, and specifically the appropriate language to use for each person. So for instance, you don't call a deaf person hard of hearing, you refer to them as either deaf or hearing impaired. But equally, you don't call someone mobily impaired, you call them a person of disability when referring to someone who, say, needs a wheelchair. And I really hate this. It's all based in commie gobbledygook. The language around it, the forced language specifically, and the way that they use people of, it is so dehumanizing, and it is so tied to this idea of individualism versus collectivism. If you're a person with, you aren't your own person, you're just one of a group. And it's all about forming the hierarchies and putting people into the hierarchies of control so that they are deemed into a lesser class. The entire idea behind the persons of label is entirely based in the class system structure of Marxist ideology, designed to make people feel more discriminated against. And as we get started talking about language, my professor mentions that one of the words you're not supposed to say is crippled. I've raised my hand in class because I'm a respectful student, but I'm going to say my mind. I've done this literally every class where I've basically fought with him about something he said, or given my perspective because I know for a fact he doesn't know it. He doesn't have anyone around him who has an opinion like mine, so I make sure to say it so everyone in the class has someone who's a contrarian, so they can possibly understand an alternate perspective. And I mentioned to him, well, I had a friend who was crippled, objectively. He couldn't walk right, he had problems with his legs and his hips from a childhood injury. He didn't want to be called specially able, disabled, person with he would hate to be called a person with a disability. He wanted to be called crippled. That is what he wanted to be called, and he appreciated when people were that, because that label is honest, that label is assigned by him, and no one else can take that away from him, and so I made sure to. And in fact, the fact that it was an insult was a bit of a joke as well. And then we get to every single middle schooler's favorite word, the R slur. For those, I think I'm safe to say it on YouTube, but if not, I'll have to cut this part out. But the word, of course, is retard. We get to talking about retard, and he says that you can't say that, you should never say that, and calmly raise my hand. Gen Z, different generation than those who came from before us, and Gen Alpha is a terrifyingly different beast. That word's making a comeback, both amongst the disabled community and the people who are family members with disabled communities. A lot of people with Down syndrome, a lot of autistic people, a lot of people who have these mental disabilities would rather be called that than specially abled, SPED, person of differing ability, neurodivergent. Oh God, don't even get me started on the term neurodivergent. Actually, we'll get there later. People don't want this language that's requiring them pussyfooting around. They want to be talked to straight. They want to be talked to like adults. And worst of all, we talk about all these other words. Lame, dumb, mute, moron. All these words. They're modern insults now, but most people don't know this, but they were actually tied into medical language. A dumb person was someone with a sub 80 IQ. A moron was a person with substandard IQ. All of these terms were made to insult people. Someone who is lame, can't walk right, or is short of a few mental faculties. All of these terms are insults that were originally medical terms, and the same goes for retard, for specially able, for sped. All of these words, they come from a good place, and they became something nasty. And that's just the nature of children, because children are the ones using these words as insults. You're never going to change that, and every time you make a new word, you should add another insult that they can use to their cavalry. And I know my analytics is mostly 45 up. The fact of the matter is, you might not remember it, but I do. Every single time a new word comes up, it only lasts about a year or two of being in the zeitgeist before it goes from something progressive to something insulting, and it never takes longer than that. But later, as we're talking about the banned words, he mentions the R slur, and I raise my hand again. I'm like, well, that word's making a comeback, actually. A lot of the disabled people are using it. And he goes, no, you do not do that. You do not use that word. Never use that word. You will get yourself fired. I'm like, well, it's not being used in professional settings. It's being used in social settings by people who classify for the definitions, by people who know people who classify for these definitions, brothers and sisters of mentally disabled people. These words are making a comeback because the people who claim to be affected by it aren't. All of these words are labeled offensive by ivory tower normal people, and that's being pushed onto the average day citizen to make them think that these words are bad, when in reality they aren't. And then, of course, I kind of let it rest. I didn't really say anything for the rest of the class, let conversation continue. And then at the end of the class, I actually approached my professor. I'm like, hey, professor, I wanted to talk more about this. Most of the people I know, none of them minded it. None of the people I've ever known really cared, and that goes for more than just needs. It goes for basically any kind of these taboo words. When you make a word taboo, you just make it worse. You give the word power, you give the word more strength, and I forget exactly how, we get to the point of extrapolating this out to other taboo words, such as one's engaging sexuality. And I go, I don't even mind the F slur. And he goes, you wouldn't be upset if someone called you a fag? Like, not at all. And he goes, he's absolutely confused. He's like, well, all of my friends would lose their mind if someone called them. I'm like, well, maybe that's just difference in generation and difference in mindset. Because for me, if you call me that word, you better have a reason to, or you're just being funny. Because if you have a reason to do it, I probably deserve it. And if not, you're probably being funny. Because let's be honest, no one gives a crap about that word anymore. Since when does that word have power? Well, I have had one friend who had a really big holdup about this. And it was kind of a leftist hypocrisy that I noticed a lot. He hated it when lesbians used the word. He also hated when straight people use it. But he mostly hated lesbians for using it. And his justification was this. The F slur was rooted in the word failure of a man. And because of that, it is an explicitly misandristic slur. And therefore, women cannot use it. Take a second to pause because I oppose any form of forced or compelled speech, either for or against. And I had to pause for a second because my friend's British. And what are the British two favorite words? Bitch and cunt. And he says both of them nonstop because he's British. He's as British as they come. And I'm like, well, how can you justify saying these words, but you personally don't believe women should be allowed to use the F slur? And he goes, they don't relate. No relation. I'm like, well, you know what those words mean. Of course he does. A bitch is a derogative for a woman, basically applying her to that of a dog. And the other slur is a really nasty word for women's private parts. And he just couldn't accept this notion. And this gets me into exactly what the problem with the left is and why the left cannot handle a debate with the right or the center. Because let's be clear. Let's be very clear about something. I am not right-wing. In the grand scheme of things, my placement on the political scale probably looks a little bit something like this, where the X is slightly left and super far down the libertarian track. But the only problem is with that graph is where the Overton window sets in relation to where I do. Because in reality, I might be down here, the Overton window is all the way over here. No matter how far left I am, it is almost completely impossible for me to be in line with the Overton window. And of course, the Overton window, much to most of these liberals and every single punk rocker who pretends to still be punk's dismay, the Overton window is up in the authoritarian side. It is pro-authority and it is extremely anti-personal rights and personal freedoms and therefore incredibly anti-personal liberty and anti-libertarian. So I'm sorry, Rage Against the Machine. I'm sorry, Green Day. You are all a bunch of authoritarian bootlickers, not us. But when it comes to the actual leftists, and what the reason why these people cannot comprehend our thoughts is they physically are incapable of understanding what we have to say, because they don't see moral discussion as right and wrong, as merit-based. They don't see it as possible. They don't see it as a give and take. Because in reality, governance and conversation is give and take. Some people have to give and some people have to take. Every single red letter topic is going to be centered in a give and take situation. No one gets what they want on abortion. No one's going to get what they want on gun control. No one's going to get what they want on any of these positions. And you're going to have to give a little, you're going to have to take a little, but you got to be careful, because if you give an inch, they'll take a mile. But you got to be able to negotiate with people. Otherwise, nothing will ever get done. But negotiation can only happen if both people engage in the thought process that there is a right and there is a wrong, and both sides have at least some merit. So where's the disconnect? It's in that word, right and wrong. They don't think the discussion of morality is right versus wrong. They see it as good versus bad. They don't see an alternate opinion on gun control as a right or wrong opinion. They see it as a good or bad opinion. They see it as the good opinion is I want to restrict guns because no one should have a gun. And if someone has a gun, someone can die. And that is the bad. The bad is wanting guns so people can die. That's how they think. I wish I was making a straw man. I really do. But this is how, if you look at them, if you instruct them, it's over and over again. Why do you think they use buzzwords? The buzzwords, misogynist, homophobe, transphobe, racist, all of those things, they're used to label you as a bad person, while simultaneously being used as if it is to call you a wrong person. J.K. Rowling's opinions aren't wrong based on the merit of her argument. They're wrong based on the fact that they aren't in the Overton window, and therefore they are evil. The way it works is if you are in the green square, you are the good guy. You are the virtuous, and you are correct. You are correct by virtue of being good. If you are in the pink, you are wrong, not because of the merit of what you say or lack thereof, but because it is an evil take. And therefore, because they must be good for having their beliefs, if you don't have their beliefs, you are a villain. They cannot argue with you because they do not see good, they only see evil. But this begs the important question. Why is it then that they are so determined to undermine the concept of evil in media? All of the modern shows, well, the orcs in Rings of Power, they're not evil, they're just misunderstood. The orc daddy just wants to go home to his orc mommy and his orc baby. And it's all the mean white men forcing them to go to war. Because orcs are just innocent black people. Or Agatha all along. Oh, well, these 4 witches who kill people, slander, steal, and cheat, they're not bad people because of this. They are only a victim of their circumstance. The evil space cult of lesbian witches and the Acolyte, they're not evil. Sure, they use the evil dark side of the Force and they turn into 4 smoke monsters. But they're not evil, they're just trying to protect themselves. The reason why they're trying to undermine this idea of morality is because it doesn't match theirs. Some people say that the reason why they want these people to appear good is because they don't believe in evil. They don't believe in good versus right. And this is kind of mentioned in the Acolyte. It's not about good or bad. It is about power and who's allowed to wield it. The people who they want to have the power are the ones they think don't. Problem is, they don't understand the power structure. They think it's still the 1960s, and they cannot comprehend the fact that the world has changed dramatically. So when I talk to my professor, when I talk to people online, they're not looking at my argument with any merit. They're not looking at it with any consideration. All they see is that I'm a bad person because I don't agree with them, because their opinion is the good one. Let's make a really stupid example. Let's say on Sundays, it's wrong to eat chocolate ice cream. Why is it wrong? Well, who knows? Maybe it's hard to get enough chocolate for the rest of the week, so they want you to not eat it on Sunday, so there's more for the rest of the week. It doesn't matter. But let's just say it's wrong, it's considered wrong and against the rules to eat chocolate ice cream on Sunday. But let's say you really want it. Well, to the normal person, it's wrong because the supplies are limited. To the far leftists in the Overton window, it is wrong because not eating chocolate ice cream on Sunday is being good. You're doing the right thing. And because you are doing the right thing by doing it, it must mean by eating chocolate ice cream on a Sunday, you are doing the wrong thing. You are doing the wrong thing deliberately. And because it is the wrong thing, regardless of why. Let's say, just to make this example more stupid, the city gets an extra shipment of chocolate that week. So there's a lot more chocolate ice cream, and you can have chocolate ice cream on Sunday. But to the leftists, because it is inherently wrong, because of the potential risk that some people won't get chocolate because of the limitations, it is actively evil to do so. Because by doing so, you are doing something you deliberately know to be wrong, and because the opposite of wrong is good, and not good in the sense that it is appropriate, but good in the sense that it is morally just. The opposite can only be moral injustice. And you can see this play out in real-world examples. For instance, in the language department that I was mentioning earlier, my professor could not comprehend the fact that many Gen Z LGBT people, are perfectly fine with the use of the F slur, is because to him, the use of the F slur is inherently evil. All of his old 55-plus-year-old friends all think the word is evil. The only reason they think that is because they were told it was evil. These people are not formulating these opinions for themselves generally, and when they do, they are extrapolating it from other things they've been told. My rationale, while I'm okay with it, is pretty simple. Words have only the meaning that you give them. If you speak to an English, if I call a Japanese person the F slur, it will have no meaning because he doesn't know what that word means. If I call a baby the N-word, it has no meaning because the baby doesn't know what that means. Now, the people around me might be upset because to them, the word has meaning, but it only has the meaning that they have. I can say the word and not be upset because I know my personal meaning. I generally hate the idea of subjectivism. Subjectivism is generally a morally horrible idea that pretty much always puts people in a place where they can justify basically any kind of act based on the fact that I want to. It's a very infantile idea that really just encourages moral weakness, but it is the case that words have the meaning you give them. When someone says something rude to you, it is rude to you because you pick up the rude meaning. It's the reason why texting is so hard. Why there are studies out there saying that Gen Z don't like the use of the thumbs up emoji because it comes off as passive aggressive. I think that's a lot of bullshit, by the way. None of us give a shit. But periods that can come off as a little grumpy sounding. But the reason for that is because we are interpreting the words the way it is sent to us. Your meaning does not matter when it comes to these words. Now, while I think meaning does matter a lot of times, it doesn't for something like offense. You could call me the meanest, most vile things, and I will not care. You know what someone called me in my comments? They said I'm the Chris Chan knockoff. I've had so many people comment on the state of my forehead. I've had people comment on my beard. I've had people comment on the fact that I look worse than people I'm making fun of in videos. I have people saying all these horrible things to me. And I would care less than a Section 8er when they put out fresh lobster at the Golden Corral buffet. Because I know these people aren't worth the time of day. I know these people are only insulting me on a YouTube comment because their lives are truly sad. I know for a fact that nothing these people have to say has any merit because they themselves have no merit. There's a great quote. All right, now that I bothered to check this quote, I hate it. I will never use it again. Your boos mean nothing. I see what makes you cheer. It's said by Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, and that is truly horrible, and I wish I never knew that. So thank you for that, for ruining one of my favorite quotes. But anyway, it's an incredibly valid point. If you look at what makes them cheer and what they consider to be good, you can also see what they consider to be evil and what makes them boo. And you know what? I'm far happier with their boos than their cheers because I would much rather be who I am, with confident with what I am doing, and the fact that I'm actually doing this than engaging with their terrible ideas and their terrible morals. Because I'm not saying their morals are inherently evil, but they are, by God, horrible and meritless. So like I said, this was really long-winded. I didn't really know what I was going to say. I don't have a script because that takes time, and the last thing I wanted to do is put any effort into this. And I'm sure my ideas aren't complete because I'm a college student. You know, I'm doing a psychology degree, I'm getting a philosophy minor and a comm minor, so I have some understanding of these concepts, but I have a lot more to learn on them. And I would love it if you guys in the comments left your own descriptions. I know damn well my dad's going to watch this and he's going to have a lot of issues with what I've said, and he's going to make sure I know all of them because my dad is a weirdo on Discord. He's going to message me exclusively in Discord. Yes, I know my ideas aren't complete. I know my ideas are lacking some things. But from where I sit, it really does feel like this idea that the reason why the left cannot rationalize with the rest of us is because they are not engaging with the rest of us. They refuse to engage in with good faith. They refuse to engage in with integrity and intention of actually having a discussion. And all they care to engage with is their emotional state. When I say something to disagree with them, I'm upsetting them because their morality is tied to their emotions and not to their logic. And when it's tied to their emotions, what makes them sad must be evil, because these people have never engaged in anything that gives them any kind of personal resilience. They do not have strength of will, and they do not have strength of character, and they unfortunately cannot even get that from engaging in online discussion. And I've seen this with so many people, especially in college, who still cannot handle discussion and disagreement. There's a flat earther on campus who has admitted before that he doesn't actually believe the earth is flat. He just wants to try and force students to think. Now, of course, very few students have heard that, and very less students care. They only think he's here to push an agenda, and because of that, the agenda angers them. Not because they know why it angers them, not because they know what's wrong with the agenda, but because they know the agenda is wrong. And because it's wrong, it must be evil. But those disjointed thoughts are pretty much all I've got for today. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see more of these overtly opinionated op-eds, which I guess is a little redundant, or, if you think I'm completely off kilter, if you think my assumptions on why the left cannot engage in conversation with us is completely wrong, or if you like what I've had to say, all the same, I would love to hear all of it, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.